Nicole, we missed you. We're so happy you're back. All right. Well, I have to tell you that a lot of planning goes into our stories. And next week, Chris and I are going to spend some time sharing with you guys kind of some of the behind-the-scenes stuff that will hopefully help you when you're shaping and preparing for sharing your story as well. But for as much preparing and planning as we do, God sometimes mixes things up. And he's done that a lot for me this semester. I think he's been building up my trust in him, and he did it last week. He changed some things up, and I knew right away that he had a different plan. And so I was just like, oh, whatever, like whoever your story is, if we don't have a story, it's fine. And we spent some time in prayer, and he very quickly revealed that my friend Abby was going to be sharing with us today. So I'm so excited to introduce you guys to her. So why don't you start off and just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay. Well, my name is Abby Holmes, and I am 27 years old, and I am married to Carson Holmes. We've been married for a little over a year now. I grew up most of my childhood in East Texas, but moved to Flower Mountain High School. I do not have any kids yet. I went to college and studied dance, and now I teach dance full-time at a local studio. And I don't have a story.
So Abby has been in my small group, and our group, we were just talking this morning, has been so blessed to walk along Abby's journey with her a lot this year. So I'd like for her to share some of the questions and some of the doubts that she has had about her story, because I'm sure you just heard her say, I don't have a story. I don't think she's alone in feeling that way. So I just want you to share some of those doubts and fears and things that have happened over the last year, but also kind of throughout your life when it comes to your story.
Yes. So I did accept Christ at a very early age, but a story of desperation is not my story. And with that, especially as I've gotten older, has brought on some doubts when I hear these really strong women give their stories, and they're so impactful. So some questions that go through my head, especially this season of this Psalm study, has just been mainly questions this weekend after she asked me to do this. How do I fulfill my purpose of spreading the good news if I don't have something special to tell? How do I compare to a lady that struggled with abortion or drugs or suicide when it comes to impacting the kingdom? They know God better than me, right? He's clearly given them personal glimpses into how awesome he can be. Am I really any match against these women to tell my story? Surely they will do a much better job of bringing people to Jesus. Do they go through this psalm study just nodding at every outcry David has in total understanding while I struggle to relate at all? And even just before this, thinking that I was going to come up here and just be a huge joke, and that is so Satan. But there was also an even darker time of insecurity that I let totally own me, where I even started asking the question, am I saved? If my story doesn't look like theirs, then maybe it didn't happen for me. And I have two examples. I had a very, very dear friend who confided in me about some struggles she was going through just in marriage and in finances, and her whole world had kind of toppled upside down. But through all of that, I got to be a close eyewitness into her walk with Jesus. And she is a person that prays and is brought to tears every time she prays, multiple quiet times a day, always texting me verses that God has revealed to her. And rather than looking at her and admiring these qualities, I got really jealous. I got really jealous that I didn't pray like her, and really jealous that God hadn't given me these moments of desperation where I could grow as close to him as she was. And I let this jealousy turn into a doubt. Like, if my walk doesn't look like hers, then somehow that means maybe I don't have one. And then another story comes with my husband. My husband and I met in 2013, and he led us so well throughout our dating process. A month in, he thought that it would be a good idea to sit down and share our testimonies, share our stories. And there were times where I let kind of my lack of story give me a little bit of a big head. So in this moment, I'm thinking, okay, well, here's where he falls in love with me, because I was just this goody two-shoe Christian girl, and he was going to love my story because I had grown up in church and had loving parents who loved Jesus. In fact, I let him go first. He can tell his story first. And within about 30 seconds, he hit me with the bombshell of when he was in 6th grade, he held a gun to his head. And the only reason he didn't pull the trigger was because his friend called him to go outside and play. I'm like, okay, wow. And it continues with drugs in high school and sex and alcohol. And he said it was okay to share this, by the way. But and abortion in college, and then going from being atheist to agnostic to Buddhist to atheist again. And then he was reading this book called The Blue Zones that kind of talks to you about how to lead a healthy life. And one thing in there was community, and he knew churches were really good at that. So he was just going to fake his way through church and reap the benefits, and went to a service one day, and it changed his life forever. Are you kidding me? So in my head, I'm like, okay, I did skip school that one day in high school. Okay. And I'm like trying to create a story, right? Like trying to make up things, because somehow all of a sudden I didn't feel redeemed enough for him, like that he was going to hear my story and think I was a total joke. So that's just a glimpse into the insecurity I feel because I don't have this dark, twisted story. Isn't that weird? It's weird to me.
It's not weird. It's not weird. I don't think she's alone. So last week, we were all challenged to think about and pray about our personal Jerusalem. And we were in small group, and Abby shared hers, and it was a really powerful moment. And I think it was powerful for you to spend some time figuring out what that was. I will tell you that I'm not going to share what your Jerusalem is. You can share it in a minute. But through that, it was what God made it so clear that she was going to share her story this week. So what I want you to share is just some of the truths that you know. We know that know versus feel, right? We all do. Some of these doubts are a lot of feel. Mm-hmm. So what do you know as truth?
Know versus feel has probably been the biggest thing I've taken away from this study. So everything I just said to you is totally what I feel. And what I have come to know, even just over this past week, like she said, when we started talking about our Jerusalem, and then when she asked me to do this, God kind of created, this moment for me to figure these things out. So some of these things I'm going to read to you, I didn't figure out until just maybe 5 days ago, which is cool. God's just showing off. So here we go. So I have 5 truths that I feel like have been important. The first one, and this is kind of a duh one, but there is absolutely nothing lame about how anyone came to know the master and creator of the universe. It does not matter what your story looks like. It can be dark and twisted, or it can be not. But there's all these verses I found. I'm not going to read them because there were a lot, but in 2 Corinthians, in Romans, in Ephesians, in 1 John, there's tons of glimpses of this picture of what happens to us when we're saved. And it's what happens to all of us. It's this really beautiful image of redemption and being washed clean and getting right with Jesus. And that happens to anybody. So shame on me for thinking that it's boring, that my story is boring. The second truth is that my story doesn't end the moment I get saved. Sometimes it's just the starting point. I had this unrealistic view that people's stories are what happened leading up to the moment they got saved. But God revealed to me a lot of characters in the Bible, like David, Mary, Noah, Hosea, Moses. Their stories in the Bible take place long after they've been living this life of faith. They were saved sometimes at young ages, and their stories and their journeys didn't start until later. The third truth is just that Satan comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And I can't believe these lies that I'm not experienced enough for what God has called me to do. And I found a verse that I'm going to read that kind of goes along with this. It's out of the Message version, which I really liked. It's 1 Corinthians 26:7, and it says, Take a good look, friends, at who you were when you got called to this life. I don't see many of the brightest and the best among you, not many influential, not many from high society families. Isn't it obvious that God deliberately chose men and women that the culture overlooks? And I loved that verse, and I think it just kind of brought this idea to me that I think there's purpose and importance in every kind of story in the church, that those stories of lives completely turned around from these dark places, and then stories of lives lived faithfully, and I think that that's awesome. My fourth truth is just that when I am engaged in the Word and I know my Jesus well, He is so much easier to identify when seeking Him in the hard times. So this is where my Jerusalem comes in. That's the stage that I'm in, this discipline and this learning and this creating spiritual habits. And so I'm kind of in this preparation stage, I think, because I haven't lived a whole lot of life yet, and I need to keep that in mind. But a verse I found was John 10:27, and it says, "My sheep recognize my voice." And so I want to bask in this time in my life where I am disciplining myself and allowing God to give me this motivation to be in the Word daily and to pray daily, so that when I am on my journey, His voice is undeniable because I know Him that well. And then my fifth and final truth is just that this is not about me or my story at all. And I'd be foolish to think that that's what's saving people. It's the power of Jesus, and He is powerful enough to work through the simplest of people, because it's really His story that we're telling, and it's the best story in the world. So I kind of summed this up, if I could leave us with anything, just with the thought that when you start to feel unworthy and you're lacking confidence in your story and its ability to have an impact, remember whose story you're actually telling, and let that be more than enough, because Jesus is enough.
Thank you. All right, will y'all pray with me? Oh, Father, these stories, it's overwhelming that you would choose me to even work with these ladies and be a part of their journey to know you better. I'm so grateful for it. Our stories are yours and yours alone, whether they are big and dramatic and like a soap opera, like I feel like mine is some days, or whether we feel like we don't have one at all. They are yours. And just like Abby just said, yours is enough. You are enough. I'm so thankful for you, for your Son who died for us, so that we can have this time, we can be intimate with you, and we can know you better and more every day. It's in His name that we pray. Amen.